Marcus Bennett sat comfortably in his leather first-class seat aboard Skyline Airlines Flight 302 from New York to San Francisco, reviewing presentation slides on his tablet. At 43, he had built Byte Vision Technologies from a small startup into a company valued at over $2 billion. The early morning flight meant most passengers were either sleeping or working quietly, exactly how he preferred to travel. A flight attendant moved through the cabin, offering pre-takeoff beverages to passengers. Michael Wilson, sitting across the aisle, received his requested coffee with a warm smile from the attendant. The elderly couple in front got their orange juices promptly. But when the flight attendant, Rebecca Lawson, reached Bennett's row, she passed by without acknowledging him. Bennett looked up from his tablet, assuming she hadn't noticed he was awake. He'd been flying Skyline's premium class twice monthly for years, and had watched their service gradually decline since their merger with Continental Express. Still, being completely overlooked was unusual. "Excuse me," Bennett called politely as Rebecca moved past him again. She continued walking, though Bennett noticed her slight hesitation that suggested she'd heard him. He returned to his work, deciding to wait until she came around again. 20 minutes after takeoff, Rebecca served drinks to the first-class cabin. Again, she attended to every passenger except Bennett. When she finished serving the section and turned to leave, Bennett pressed his call button. The soft chime echoed, but Rebecca didn't return. After pressing it twice more without response, Bennett caught the attention of another flight attendant, David Chen. "Sir, how can I help you?" David asked. "I'd like a sparkling water, please." "I've been trying to order for a while," Bennett explained. David nodded apologetically. "Of course, I'll bring that right away." When David returned with the water, Bennett asked, "Is there a problem with my call button? I pressed it several times earlier." "I don't think so," David replied, looking uncomfortable. "Rebecca is assigned to this section. I'll mention it to her." Bennett thanked him and returned to his work. Nearby passengers had noticed the situation, exchanging glances. A woman 2 rows ahead made eye contact with Bennett and gave a sympathetic smile. An hour into the flight, as Rebecca served the first meal service, the pattern continued. Every passenger received their meal choice except Bennett, who was served last and without being offered options. "I believe there was a choice of chicken or pasta today?" Bennett asked when she wordlessly placed a tray in front of him. "This is what's left," Rebecca responded curtly, already turning away. Bennett looked down at a pasta dish despite having heard her offer chicken to another passenger just moments before. He wasn't particularly bothered by the meal itself. He'd eaten enough airline food to have minimal expectations, but the deliberate nature of the treatment was becoming impossible to ignore. "Excuse me," Bennett said firmly. "Could I speak with you for a moment about the service today?" Rebecca turned slowly. "I'm busy serving other passengers. I understand, but I've noticed I'm being treated differently from everyone else in this cabin," Bennett said, keeping his voice low and calm. "If there's an issue, I'd appreciate knowing what it is." A few nearby passengers were now openly watching the exchange. Rebecca glanced around, noticing the attention. "There's no issue," she said tensely. "Then I'd like to be treated with the same courtesy as other passengers," Bennett replied. "If that's not possible, I'd like to speak with your supervisor." Something changed in Rebecca's expression, a flash of anger breaking through her professional veneer. "You people always want to speak to supervisors, don't you?" The cabin grew quieter. Bennett's expression remained composed, though his eyes registered the comment's implication. "What exactly do you mean by you people?" he asked quietly. Rebecca leaned closer. "You think your money makes you special? That we should all jump when you snap your fingers?" "I haven't snapped my fingers," Bennett responded. "I've only asked for the same service others are receiving. I have other passengers to attend to," Rebecca said dismissively. As she turned away, Bennett reached out slightly, not touching her but gesturing to continue the conversation. "I'd still like to speak with your—" The slap happened so quickly that several passengers gasped. Rebecca's hand connected with Bennett's cheek with a crack that seemed to echo through the cabin. Bennett's head jerked sideways from the impact, his glasses knocked askew. Complete silence followed for 3 heartbeats, then the cabin erupted in shocked exclamations. Bennett slowly straightened his glasses, his cheek reddening where she had struck him. Rebecca stood frozen, seemingly shocked by her own action. "I need your employee identification and the name of your supervisor," Bennett said with remarkable composure. though his voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. Across the aisle, Michael Wilson was already recording with his phone. The elderly couple looked horrified. A businessman in the row behind stood up. "I saw everything." That was completely unprovoked. Rebecca backed away, her face flushing. "You don't understand. He was being difficult. We all saw what happened," a woman called from her seat. "We've all been watching you ignore him while serving everyone else." David Chen rushed forward, having heard the commotion. "What's going on?" "She just assaulted that passenger," someone said. "After deliberately providing inferior service," added another voice. Bennett remained seated, touching his cheek gently. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "I'd like to file a formal complaint and speak with the captain." David looked at Rebecca in disbelief. "Did you strike a passenger?" Rebecca's professional demeanor had completely collapsed. He was being demanding. "You don't know what these entitled executives are like." "These?" Bennett interrupted, his eyes meeting Rebecca's. "Would you care to elaborate on what you mean?" More phones were out now, recording the aftermath. Rebecca seemed to suddenly realize the seriousness of the situation, her anger giving way to panic. "I didn't mean—" "It wasn't about—" she stammered. "Wasn't about what?" Bennett pressed. Before she could answer, the plane's intercom crackled. "This is your captain speaking. We've been informed of an incident in the cabin. I'm asking all passengers to return to their seats and all crew to maintain professionalism. We'll be addressing this matter immediately." David escorted Rebecca toward the front of the plane while another flight attendant approached Bennett with a first aid kit and ice pack. "I'm fine," Bennett assured her, declining the ice. "But I would like to use the aircraft Wi-Fi. Please." As the attendant provided Bennett with the premium Wi-Fi access code, passengers throughout the cabin were already sending videos to social media, texting friends and making calls. A passenger across the aisle leaned toward Bennett. "I've got the whole thing recorded, sir, from when she first ignored you. I'd be happy to send it to you." "Thank you," Bennett replied, powering up his laptop. "That would be helpful." Bennett connected to the Wi-Fi and opened his email. His fingers hovered over the keyboard momentarily before he began typing a message to his executive team and legal counsel. The subject line read simply, "Incident on Skyline 302. Urgent response needed. Outside the aircraft windows, the country passed beneath them, unaware that in the pressurized cabin above, the first tremors of what would become an organizational earthquake had just begun. Skyline Airlines, with its fleet of 273 aircraft and workforce of 28,000 employees, had started a 10-minute countdown to implosion, triggered by a single, impulsive slap. The first video hit Twitter 7 minutes after the slap. A passenger in row 4 posted a 20-second clip with the caption, "Flight attendant just slapped a black businessman on my Skyline flight for asking to be served like everyone else." Skyline slap. Within 3 minutes, it had been shared over 1,000 times. 2 minutes later, a second angle appeared on Instagram, showing more of the lead-up. The flight attendant clearly skipping the CEO during service while attending to others. This video captured Rebecca's "You people" comment clearly. The comment section exploded. Inside the plane, the cabin crew had gone into crisis mode. The lead flight attendant, Denise Harris, came to speak with the CEO directly, her face tight with professional concern masking obvious panic. "Sir, on behalf of Skyline Airlines, I want to express our deepest apologies for this inexcusable incident," she said, crouching beside his seat. "The captain has requested to speak with you privately once we've reached cruising altitude." The CEO nodded, his hand still occasionally touching his cheek, where a faint red mark remained visible. "I appreciate that. I'll be filing formal charges once we land." Across the aisle, passengers were openly discussing what they'd witnessed. "Did you hear what she said to him? You people." "Clear as day," said a woman in a business suit. "I've been on this flight with him before," replied an older gentleman. "He flies this route all the time, never causes any trouble. Always polite to the staff." The CEO could hear them but maintained his focus on his laptop. His executive team had already begun responding to his email. His chief communications officer had texted, "Video's already going viral. We need to get ahead of this. Your call on how to respond. Media will be reaching out within the hour." The plane made an unexpected banking motion, and the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reynolds speaking. Due to an onboard incident requiring immediate attention, We will be making an unscheduled landing at Denver International Airport. We apologize for any inconvenience and will provide further information as it becomes available. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened as we begin our descent. A collective murmur went through the cabin. The CEO's phone began vibrating continuously with incoming calls and messages. His executive assistant had texted, "CNN just called asking for comment." "Fox News too. Your mother also called, she saw it on social media already." The CEO took a deep breath and typed a message to his team. "No comments yet. Let's see how the airline handles this first. I'll call when we land." As the plane began its descent, the CEO noticed passengers from economy class finding excuses to walk past his seat, glancing at him curiously. News of the incident had clearly spread throughout the aircraft. He kept his expression neutral, occasionally nodding at those who made eye contact. When the plane landed at Denver, 2 airport police officers and several airline officials in suits were already waiting at the gate. As passengers began to disembark, the captain made another announcement. "We ask that passenger Jason Reynolds in seat 2A and flight attendant Rebecca Lawson remain on board briefly to speak with authorities. All other passengers may deplane normally. Skyline representatives will be in the terminal to assist with connecting flights." As economy passengers filed past the CEO's seat toward the exit, many offered words of support. "That was horrible what happened to you, sir. I've got it all on video if you need another copy. I'm never flying Skyline again after seeing that." When most passengers had deplaned, one of the airline officials approached. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Patrick Chen, Skyline station manager for Denver. We'd like to address this situation immediately and privately in our lounge." The CEO closed his laptop. "I'm happy to speak with you, but I'll need any conversation to be documented." "My legal team is already involved." The police officers approached next. "Sir, we understand there was an assault on this aircraft. Would you like to file a report?" "Yes, I would." Rebecca was escorted off the plane first, looking visibly shaken. Through the aircraft windows, the CEO could see news vans already gathering at the terminal. His phone buzzed with a text from his director of security. "Airport footage from JFK obtained. Shows you at check-in and boarding. All normal professional interaction. We're securing it now in case they try to claim you did something before boarding to provoke this." By the time the CEO stepped into the terminal, Skyline Slap was trending #1 nationally. The original video had been viewed over 300,000 times. Major news networks were running breaking news alerts. Inside the airline's premium lounge, which had been cleared of other passengers, Skyline's legal counsel and senior staff waited. A large TV on the wall was tuned to CNN, where the headline banner read, "Breaking: Flight Attendant Slaps Black CEO on Skyline Flight. Airline Stocks Plummet." The CEO's phone rang. It was his chief financial officer. "You seeing this? Skyline stock just dropped 8% in 20 minutes. Their shareholders are having a panic attack." The airline's legal counsel, a stern woman in her 50s, approached with an outstretched hand. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Catherine Walsh, General Counsel for Skyline. We want to express our deepest regrets for this incident and assure you that the employee in question has been suspended pending investigation." "Suspended?" The CEO replied calmly. "Not terminated?" Walsh's smile tightened. "We have procedures that must be followed, but I assure you, what your employee did was recorded from multiple angles." The CEO interrupted. "There's no ambiguity here." His phone buzzed with another notification. The video had now been viewed over 1 million times. Boycott Skyline was trending. CNN was showing side-by-side images of the CEO's corporate headshot next to a still from the slap video. The airline's representatives huddled in a corner, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. The CEO could hear fragments. "Stock down 12% now. Board is demanding." "Press statement ready?" He used this moment to call his team. "I'm with Skyline Management now," he said when his chief of staff answered. "They're in damage control mode." "What's our position?" "We've been approached by every major network. The story's already evolving. People are digging into Skyline's history. There have been other complaints about discriminatory treatment, apparently. Several former employees are already speaking out on social media." The CEO nodded. "And our response?" "The team thinks we should take the high road. No lawsuit threats yet, but ask for a full investigation into their culture and practices. Position you as seeking change, not revenge or money." "Agreed. Draft a statement along those lines." As he ended the call, the TV in the lounge switched to a live press conference. Skyline's CEO Thomas Walker was approaching a podium at their headquarters. Skyline Airlines is aware of an unfortunate incident that took place on one of our flights today. We take all passenger concerns seriously and are investigating the matter thoroughly. While we gather all the facts, we want to emphasize that Skyline has always been committed to providing excellent service to all our passengers without discrimination of any kind. The CEO watched, his expression unreadable. One of the police officers entered the lounge and approached him. "Mr. Reynolds, we've taken statements from multiple witnesses and reviewed video evidence. We're prepared to file assault charges if that's what you wish to pursue." The CEO considered for a moment. "Yes, please proceed with the charges." His phone buzzed again. A text from his head of HR. "Just got a call from a former Skyline flight attendant who wants to speak with you. Says she filed complaints about Rebecca Lawson's behavior toward minority passengers 6 months ago. Claims the airline buried it." Outside the lounge windows, the CEO could see more media arriving. His phone showed 27 missed calls. The Skyline representatives were now openly arguing among themselves. Their stock had fallen 15%, triggering trading circuit breakers. Just 10 minutes after the slap, what had begun as an isolated incident of poor service and unprofessional conduct was rapidly evolving into something much larger, a corporate crisis that threatened the very foundation of an airline that had been flying for over 50 years. The CEO's phone rang again. It was his mother. "Are you okay?" she asked immediately. "I'm fine, Mom. I saw what happened. Your father and I are so angry, but you handled it with such dignity, just like we taught you." The CEO smiled slightly for the first time since the incident. "Thanks, Mom, I have to go. This is about to get complicated." As he ended the call, the airline representatives approached him again, their faces grave. The station manager spoke first. "Mr. Reynolds, our CEO would like to speak with you directly." "He's on the line now." The CEO nodded and stood up. Behind the airline team on the TV screen, the hashtag #BuyerSkylineSlap continued to flash across the bottom of the screen as reporters discussed the rapidly unfolding story. Outside in the terminal, passengers were being interviewed about what they had witnessed. The 10-minute countdown to implosion was nearly complete, and the tremors were about to become an earthquake. Thomas Walker paced the length of Skyline Airlines' executive conference room, his tie loosened and jacket discarded over a chair. 6 hours had passed since the incident, and what began as a public relations problem had evolved into an existential crisis for the airline. "How bad is it?" he asked, addressing the room of worried executives. Patricia Doyle, Skyline's chief financial officer, looked up from her laptop. "Stock's down 28% and still falling. We've been halted twice already for circuit breakers. Institutional investors are calling nonstop. The video's been viewed 17 million times," added Robert Chen, head of communications. "Every major news outlet is running it. Social media is, well, it's a nightmare. Skyline slap, boycott Skyline, and Skyline bigotry are all trending nationally." Walker stopped pacing and stared at the wall of screens displaying various news channels, all showing some version of the incident. "What about our initial statement? Did that help?" Chen shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, sir, calling it an unfortunate misunderstanding seems to have made things worse. People are saying we're minimizing what clearly looks like discriminatory behavior followed by assault." "Has anyone spoken directly to Reynolds yet?" Walker asked. "I tried," said Angela Washington, the airline's general counsel. "He declined to speak with me and referred us to his legal team. His company just released their first official statement 10 minutes ago." She handed Walker her tablet. On the screen was a simple, measured statement from Byte Vision Technologies. "This morning, our chief executive officer was physically assaulted by a Skyline Airlines employee after being subjected to differential treatment. We are cooperating with authorities who are investigating this matter. Byte Vision Technologies has always advocated for equality and respect in all professional environments, and we expect the same values from our business partners. We are currently reviewing our corporate travel policies." Walker winced at the last sentence. Byte Vision was one of their largest corporate accounts. "They're reviewing their corporate travel policies? That's a $12 million account," he muttered. The CEO muted the television as his phone rang. It was William Turner, his chief legal officer. "I just got off the phone with CNN," Turner said without preamble. "They found 3 more passengers who claim they experienced similar treatment from Rebecca Lawson on Skyline flights over the past year. Two of them filed formal complaints that went nowhere. Any chance they're just jumping on the bandwagon? The CEO asked, ever the careful analyst. One has boarding passes and contemporaneous emails to friends describing the incident, Turner replied. Seems credible to me. The CEO sighed. What about Lawson? Has she made any public statements? Nothing yet. She's hired an attorney who's issued a no comment so far. But there's something else you should know. We've been contacted by 15 former Skyline employees since yesterday, all wanting to share stories about the company culture. Some of what they're alleging is troubling, such as systemic issues with how complaints were handled, pressure on staff to meet unrealistic metrics without adequate support, uneven application of rules and policies depending on who the passenger was, and a few mentioned something called the problem passenger list, apparently an unofficial list of customers who complained too much, with notes about how to discourage them from flying Skyline again. The CEO rubbed his temples. That sounds potentially illegal. It likely is, Turner agreed. I've asked our team to carefully document everything. Several reporters are already working on investigative pieces. This is going beyond just what happened to you. After ending the call, the CEO opened his laptop to review his schedule for the next day. His inbox was flooded with meeting requests. Media outlets, corporate leaders, advocacy groups, even politicians wanting to discuss the incident and its implications. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. A hotel staff member stood outside with an envelope. Urgent delivery for you, sir, she explained, handing it over. Inside was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. Mr. Reynolds, I was on your flight 2 days ago. I sit in first class twice weekly on that route and have observed the flight attendant in question, treating certain passengers differently for months. I never spoke up, telling myself it wasn't my business. I regret that silence now. What happened to you was inexcusable, and I've provided my video and statement to the authorities. But I wanted to personally apologize for being one of the many who noticed a problem and did nothing until it escalated to violence. Respectfully, Dr. Gregory Williams, Chief of Surgery, Boston Memorial Hospital. The CEO set the letter aside thoughtfully. His phone buzzed with a text from his executive assistant. Transportation Secretary's office called. She wants to meet privately before tomorrow's scheduled meeting. Before he could respond, another call came through. His mother again. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm fine, Mom, just busy. I saw you on the news. You were so composed. But I know this must be taking a toll. The CEO smiled slightly. I'm more concerned about all the Skyline employees who had nothing to do with this. 28,000 people shouldn't lose their jobs because of one person's actions in a broken corporate system. That's my boy, his mother said proudly, always thinking of the bigger picture. After speaking with his mother, the CEO ordered room service and turned his attention to his email. Among the messages was one from a professor at Harvard Business School, requesting permission to use the Skyline incident as a case study for her corporate crisis management course. Another message caught his attention from a name he recognized as a prominent airline industry analyst, Mr. Reynolds. What's happening with Skyline is unprecedented in modern corporate America. The complete collapse of a major company triggered by a single incident that exposed deeper systemic issues. My analysis suggests that even if Skyline survives this immediate crisis, which seems increasingly unlikely, the reputational damage and financial impact will make recovery nearly impossible without a complete restructuring. I'd value your perspective on how companies in the travel sector should be addressing issues of bias and discrimination in customer service. Regards, Jonathan Parks. As the CEO was considering his response, his phone rang again. The caller ID showed it was Brian Harper, CEO of National Airways, Skyline's largest competitor. Jason, I hope I'm not disturbing you, Harper began. I wanted to reach out personally about what happened. It was appalling, and I want you to know that all of us in the industry are taking this as a serious wake-up call. I appreciate that. Brian, the reason I'm calling is that we're dealing with the operational fallout. Skyline has started canceling routes as they can't staff them. Passengers are stranded. We're adding capacity where we can, but it's chaos out there. The CEO listened as Harper explained the industry-wide impact of Skyline's rapid unraveling. Airlines were scrambling to accommodate stranded passengers. Airports were dealing with angry crowds, and the entire travel ecosystem was under strain. There's also something else, Harper continued, his voice lowering. There's a rumor that Skyline's lenders are going to call their loans tomorrow. If that happens, complete collapse, the CEO finished. Exactly. Look, I know this is an awkward position, but given Byte Vision's influence, if you were to signal some sort of path forward for Skyline, some way they could make meaningful changes rather than just folding, it might help stabilize the situation. The CEO was silent for a moment. What exactly are you asking me to do, Brian? I'm not entirely sure, Harper admitted, but 28,000 jobs are at stake, not to mention the broader impact on the travel industry. If Skyline goes down this fast, the shockwaves will hit everyone. After Harper's call, the CEO stood by the window of his hotel room, looking out at the Washington skyline as darkness fell. His reflection stared back at him. The man whose face was now recognized across the country as the embodiment of dignity in the face of discrimination. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking: Rebecca Lawson to hold press conference tomorrow. Almost simultaneously, a text came in from his communications director. Skyline Board just fired CEO Thomas Walker. Interim CEO is Patricia Doyle, former CFO. She's requesting a call with you at your earliest convenience. The CEO returned to his laptop and began typing a new email to his executive team. The subject line read, Proposed Industry Standards Initiative, Draft Framework. He wrote steadily for an hour, outlining a comprehensive approach to addressing systemic issues in customer service training, complaint handling, and corporate accountability across the travel industry. It wasn't just about Skyline anymore. It was about using this moment to create lasting change. As he worked, more messages arrived. A civil rights organization requesting his support for new legislation, 3 major corporations asking to join Byte Vision's emerging coalition, the governor of Illinois, where Skyline was headquartered, expressing concern about potential job losses, 17 interview requests from media outlets. It was past midnight when he finally closed his laptop. Tomorrow would bring Rebecca Lawson's press conference, his meeting with the transportation secretary, and potentially the final collapse of Skyline Airlines. What had begun as a shocking incident of individual misconduct had evolved into something much larger, a national conversation about corporate culture, accountability, and the hidden biases that shaped everyday experiences. As the CEO prepared for bed, he knew that the next 24 hours would determine not just the fate of one airline, but potentially how an entire industry approached these issues going forward. The story wasn't about a slap anymore. It was about what happened when that slap pulled back the curtain on problems that had been hidden in plain sight for years. 6 months after the incident that became known simply as the slap, a small group gathered in a conference room at Byte Vision's headquarters. Large windows overlooked the city skyline, bathed in late afternoon sunlight. The CEO stood at the front of the room reviewing slides for the upcoming presentation. Final numbers are in, said Diane Powell, Byte Vision's CFO, passing him a tablet. The acquisition of Skyline's assets was completed this morning for 12 cents on the dollar. The CEO nodded, scrolling through the financial details. And the employees? Nearly 18,000 retained so far under the new structure, Powell replied. Better than we projected given the circumstances. The door opened as Richard Wong, head of the newly formed Travel Industry Standards Division, entered with several folders. Sorry I'm late. Just got off the phone with the Secretary of Transportation. The new regulations are officially moving forward for congressional review. The CEO glanced at his watch. We should get started. They'll be here soon. As if on cue, his assistant appeared at the door. Sir, the first group has arrived. They're in the main reception area. Bring them up in 10 minutes. I'd like a moment with the team first. When the assistant left, the CEO turned to the small group of executives. I know these last 6 months have been challenging. We didn't set out to become a transportation company, but sometimes the path finds you. What matters now is what we do with this opportunity. Wong nodded. The coalition has grown to 63 companies. That represents over 70% of the business travel market in North America. When they implement the new standards, it will fundamentally change how the industry operates. The CEO set down his tablet. And the training program? Ready for launch next month, replied Elena Chen, the newly hired Chief Diversity Officer. We've incorporated feedback from focus groups, industry experts, and importantly, from frontline workers across multiple airlines. It's comprehensive but practical, designed to create real change, not just check regulatory boxes. Powell cleared her throat. There is one more thing you should know before the meeting starts. I received word that she's here. The CEO raised an eyebrow. I didn't think she would come. Apparently she requested to attend personally, Powell said. Our legal team advised against it, but I told them it was your call. The CEO was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Let her in with the others. It's important that all voices are heard today. 10 minutes later, the conference room doors opened. The assistant led in a diverse group of about 30 people. Former Skyline executives, industry representatives, advocacy group leaders, and government officials. Among them, walking quietly at the back of the group, was Rebecca Lawson. She looked markedly different from the woman in the viral video. Thinner, her posture less confident, her eyes downcast. She took a seat in the far corner of the room, away from the others. The CEO waited until everyone was seated before speaking. Thank you all for coming today. 6 months ago, we experienced an incident that none of us could have predicted would lead to this moment. What began as a personal confrontation quickly exposed systemic issues that demanded attention. Today we're not here to dwell on what went wrong, but to focus on the path forward. He clicked to the first slide, showing a timeline of events since the slap. Within 10 days of the incident, Skyline Airlines declared bankruptcy, the fastest corporate collapse of its size in modern business history. But what's important to understand is that this wasn't about one employee or one moment. Analysis revealed deeply embedded problems in training, corporate culture, and accountability systems. The CEO advanced to the next slide, which showed a complex organizational chart. The new entity, Horizon Air, has been structured differently from the ground up. Instead of simply changing the name and continuing old practices, we've redesigned every aspect of how the airline functions, from training to customer service to complaint resolution. As he outlined the changes, heads nodded around the room. Several former Skyline executives looked particularly interested in the new organizational approach. The most significant change is the implementation of the Transparent Service Standards Initiative. The CEO continued. This framework, developed by our coalition of industry partners, creates clear metrics and accountability for customer treatment across all touchpoints. Every interaction is logged, patterns are identified through analytics, and interventions happen before incidents can occur. He nodded to Elena Chen, who stood to explain the training program in more detail. What we've created isn't just sensitivity training, she explained. It's a comprehensive approach to service excellence that recognizes the human elements of travel. The program addresses unconscious bias, but it also focuses on practical skills for high-stress situations, proper support systems for employees, and clear guidelines for when and how to escalate concerns. As Chen spoke, the CEO noticed Rebecca Lawson watching intently, occasionally taking notes. Her face remained difficult to read. When Chen finished, Richard Wong presented the industry coalition's progress. 63 companies have signed on to implement these standards. 8 airlines, including all major U.S. carriers, have committed to the full program. We've also engaged with unions to ensure frontline workers have input at every stage. This isn't being imposed from above. It's being built together. After Wong's presentation, the CEO opened the floor for questions. There were detailed inquiries about implementation timelines, metrics for success, and regulatory compliance. Throughout the discussion, Rebecca Lawson remained silent, her eyes focused on her notepad. As the meeting began to wrap up, Patricia Doyle, the former Skyline CFO who had briefly served as interim CEO during the crisis, raised her hand. I think what's been accomplished here is remarkable, she said. But I have to ask, what's being done to ensure that employees aren't simply scapegoated when problems arise? Rebecca wasn't the only problem at Skyline, but she became the face of its downfall. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. All eyes shifted between Doyle, the CEO, and Rebecca in the corner. The CEO nodded thoughtfully. It's a critical question. Our new framework includes a fundamental shift in how accountability works. When an incident occurs, we don't just look at the individual involved. We examine the systems that created the conditions for that incident. What training was provided? What pressures existed? How were previous concerns handled? He clicked to a slide showing a complex flowchart. This is our new accountability distribution model. It recognizes that responsibility exists at multiple levels, from frontline employees to executives to the board. When something goes wrong, the analysis doesn't stop with the person who made the mistake. It follows the chain of decisions and policies that enabled that mistake to happen. Heads nodded around the room. That doesn't mean individuals aren't responsible for their actions, the CEO continued. But it does mean that no one person shoulders the entire burden for systemic failures. Had this model existed at Skyline, the outcome might have been very different. As he said this, his eyes briefly met Rebecca's. For the first time, she held his gaze for a moment before looking back down at her notes. When the formal meeting concluded, people broke into smaller groups discussing various aspects of the presentation. The CEO made his way around the room, speaking with each group briefly. Eventually, he found himself approaching the corner where Rebecca sat alone, still writing in her notepad. She looked up as he approached, her expression a complex mixture of emotions. "Thank you for coming today," he said quietly. Rebecca closed her notepad slowly. "I almost didn't. My therapist thought it might provide some closure. My lawyer thought it was a terrible idea." The CEO nodded. "And what do you think?" She was quiet for a moment. "I think I needed to see what rose from the ashes, what my actions ultimately led to." "Not just your actions," the CEO reminded her. "As we've discussed today, what happened was the result of many factors." Rebecca shook her head slightly. "But I was the one who lost control. I was the one who slapped you." She said the words with difficulty. "Nothing excuses that." "No, it doesn't," the CEO agreed. "But understanding why it happened matters if we want to prevent it from happening again." Rebecca looked down at her notepad. "I've been working with a nonprofit that focuses on bias in customer service industries. They asked me to share my experience, what led to that moment, what I wish had been different in my training, my support systems." The CEO nodded encouragingly. "I tell them that I was overworked, undertrained, and constantly pressured to move faster, serve more people, handle more tasks. I tell them that when complaints came in about me, instead of addressing them with proper coaching, management just told me to be more careful around certain passengers. I tell them that when I asked for help, I was made to feel like I was failing." She paused, then looked directly at the CEO. "But then I tell them that none of that excuses what I did to you, and I am truly sorry." The CEO nodded, accepting her apology with the same composure he had shown throughout the entire ordeal. "The program you're building here," Rebecca continued, gesturing toward the presentation materials, "it might have prevented what happened, not just by stopping me from doing what I did, but by addressing the conditions that led to that moment." As their conversation concluded, the CEO rejoined the larger group. The day was ending and people were gathering their things to leave. He stood at the front of the room one final time. 6 months ago, a single incident exposed deep flaws in a system that many had taken for granted. Today we're laying the foundation for something better. The collapse of Skyline was tragic for many, but from its failure, we have the opportunity to build something that serves everyone more equitably. As the attendees filed out, the CEO looked through the windows at the Horizon Air logo being installed on a building across the street, phoenix-like wings rising from stylized waves. It was a fitting symbol for what had emerged from the ashes of a company destroyed not by a slap, but by the broken systems that the slap had exposed. The incident that began in Seat 2A of Flight 302 had ended with an industry transformed. Sometimes it took a single moment of shocking clarity to reveal what had been hidden in plain sight all along.